of May. Hope you all had a great weekend. Hope you had a great bank holiday weekend if you are in the UK. So yes, let's have a look and see what's been going on. So WordPress has released a patch for a plugin that is on at least 2 million websites. So the Advanced Custom Fields plugin, or the Advanced Custom Fields Pro plugin, has got a vulnerability in it that allows for reflected cross-site scripting, which is basically an attacker can effectively can reflect JavaScripts to be run in the browser of the visitor to the compromised page. This for an attacker is a particularly useful technique. It's one of the OWASP top 10 and has been for a very long time. I would expect that most attackers will have some experience of how to exploit this already. So if you are using those plugins, or it's worth checking that you haven't got the plugins just kicking around. Managing plugins for WordPress is easier said than done. As in, well, it isn't really, but you actually have to do it. This particular vulnerability has got a CVE, a number of 2023 30777, CVSS score of 6.1 out of 10. So if you think you may have either of those plugins in your WordPress site, have a look. Make sure that you are up to date. Just having a quick look through to see if I can spot the version to move. No, I can't spot the version, but and as a general point, it is worth. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so you need to be on at least version 6.1.6. And as a general point, WordPress plugins to me seem to be a little bit mysterious about whether they update themselves or not. So it is always worth going in, which is worth periodically going in and nudging any plugins that that don't seem to have updated themselves. So because in the past I have seen plugins that are set to auto update and then just don't. So an interesting vulnerability. Well, it's kind of hardware vulnerability, and it is also in the bucket of, well, what on earth am I supposed to do about that? So Intel is investigating reports that the bootguard private keys belonging to Microstar International MSI have been stolen and dumped online. So what does this all mean? Well, Intel's bootguard technology is there to ensure that your hardware will only run firmware which has been officially signed. So, we're into the realms of secret squirrel stuff here, but if you can persuade someone or in some other way install compromised firmware onto a PC, or well, any device really, but PCs, in this case PCs were devices with Intel chips, you then are sitting sort of lower in the stack than the operating system, in which case anything that goes on at that level is not visible to antivirus or malware protection solutions that you might run within the operating system itself. So bootguard is there to check that the firmware being installed is signed, as in it's official. Therefore, if the bootguard private keys have been stolen, that basically means that you could write malicious firmware which will verify, because the it's been signed with the right private key. Um, this is an issue. So quite what you do about it, I don't know. I mean, this stuff, as far as I know, this stuff is hard coded into the Intel chips. So presumably MSI will now change their private key, but that isn't, I don't think, going to help retrospectively. Not entirely sure how Intel or MSI, well, Intel, who designed the bootguard system, intended to manage key rotation through this. I mean, if they've got a method of doing key rotation, then presumably this can be, the fix can be retrospectively applied to older hardware. But if they haven't, well, that in itself is a bit worrying, because PKI is only as good as the length of time it takes to break it. So being able to rotate keys is something that, whilst you don't want to be doing it day in, day out, because it's a faff, you certainly want to have the ability to do that, revoke keys and replace them. So yeah, I think at the moment there's nothing that can be done about this. All I would say then is, if you are installing firmware onto Intel devices, do your utmost to make sure that the firmware that you are installing is legitimate firmware, and don't rely entirely on bootguard technology to protect you from that, because until this is fixed, or until a solution or workaround is put in place, you can't rely on the fact that the firmware has been signed by the people who say they've signed it. And finally, from me, Twitter has admitted that a security incident made private circles visible to people outside of the circle. So, concept in Twitter, you can have sort of, well, it's kind of semi-private, I guess, Twitter circles, so that things that you post are then only viewable by selected groups of people, and that people outside of your circle shouldn't be able to see what's being posted or discussed within your circle. Okay. Not a revolutionary concept. However, works fine until it gets broken. So it looks like at some point in April this year, a security incident may have allowed users outside of the circle to see tweets that should have been limited to people within the circle. Because of the nature of these things, and because of the trusting nature of users believing the hype about whether these things are private or not, apparently people have been using this to exchange sensitive information and other things that they would not necessarily want the world to be aware of. So I think there's absolutely nothing you can do about it as a user, except don't post stuff that you don't want to go public at some point. But in the meantime, just bear in mind that this isn't necessarily a Twitter specific issue. If you have got any messaging app, any social media, your data is only as secure as the vendor or owner, or whoever of that particular social media platform wants it to be. If they choose to access it, it will be within their abilities to do that one way or another. So yeah, just think about what you post, and don't necessarily trust any of these, any big corporation to be looking after your data properly. Presumably Twitter's fixed this, but who knows. Anyway, that's all from me for today. I hope you have a good Tuesday, and I shall speak to you again tomorrow morning.